Indiana County 911. My brother's gone. Can you be a little more specific, sir? He took my brother. Who took him? I don't know who took him. I don't know what. Sir, take a breath. Explain to me what happened.
And I looked out and there was this big red blinking UFO.
I can just say this. Something's going on in the woods. Something's going on.
They're not dogs, they're not coyotes. What could it be, right?
I had an encounter with a skunk ape, and it completely altered the course of my life.
I found a skull. Are you guys gonna want to come film this?
Put him out.
I just see it.
Sightings of a UFO hovering over a barn.
Millie woke up from a dream, and when I went into the bedroom, she said there's a monster on the wall.
They saw that the creature had run through a barbed wire fence, that they were able to obtain hairs. They sent the hairs to their lab, and it came back as an unknown creature.
Bizarre Encounters with Shayn Orin.
What is up, guys, and welcome back to the most bizarre show on the motherfucking internet. I am the one that, like, two people call Shayn SQUATCH.
And I am the big bad boo daddy, Orin Felix. And that is right. We are back from holiday break, Festivus, Krampus, whatever y'all want to call it. We're back from it. I'm not going to say better than ever, but we are back nonetheless.
Does it feel better to call yourself Big Bad Boo Daddy again? It's probably been a hot minute, right?
Oh, yes. I've been eagerly anticipating calling myself the Big Bad Boo Daddy again.
And it's going to get more intense as we run through
the roof over here.
we're going to get more intense as we go through too. Cause this is the first one back. So we got to leave it a little bit mellow, but we'll come in harder as we get a little bit farther in and we'll get into the point where we're back to the wrestler announcer voice as we're introducing ourselves, but
we're easing ourselves into the new year.
So news and updates, as Orin had mentioned, we are back and again, not necessarily better than ever, but we're back. We're here. We're doing our thing. We're running the show, so that's all that really matters, I guess. But some more on the other side of exciting news and updates. First and foremost, I got a laptop upgrade finally. I know for listeners who listen to both shows, you guys have been hearing me talk about how I need to upgrade my laptop for a while. So with that being said, we will now be able to offer lives again on Patreon, as far as people being able to pop in and listen to the episodes live, and also being able to upgrade News Riverside and everything again. The premium video episodes will be back on Patreon, so that's another thing to look forward to, along with some other awesome updates, such as me not being in standard definition and looking like shit on camera anymore. So that's definitely a plus. Sorry, Orin, that you have to stare at me in full HD.
Just the definition that was doing that?
Oh no, that's just my face.
Okay.
I got a face for radio, man. Okay. I don't know if it's a good thing or a positive or a bad thing that people have to look at me in full HD now, but I'm gonna pretend like it's a positive thing. And then as far as other news and updates go, we are going to be changing the format for Bizarre Inquiries a little bit. We've been doing it, obviously, as you guys have seen, as a YouTube show that runs in about 15-minute formats. But with me also getting the computer upgrade and being able to do lives now again, we are going to be now running that as a YouTube live show. The format of it is going to change a little bit, where it's probably going to be longer episodes. We'll probably run it maybe like once a month, once every other month, but we'll kind of give you guys a little bit more info on that as we kind of roll in a little bit more. But the format for that is going to be changing a little bit, and I think it'll be a lot better for helping the show grow, get a little bit more content on YouTube. And on the other side, if anybody wants to give us a follow on TikTok, once I hit 1,000 followers, we will also be able to broadcast that live on TikTok. So then we'll be on YouTube and TikTok. And I guess with that, Orin, I'll let you get into the first piece of front of house stuff that's kind of ties in with that a bit.
Yeah, and as always, you guys remember you can submit questions for Bizarre Inquiries. It can be a question, it can be a video, it can be an article, it can be a random question that has nothing to do with cryptids or the paranormal. Anything you want, just shoot those questions our way, and at some point we will inquire about them.
Definitely inquire about them. And on another note, this podcast has a strong focus on community engagement, so I encourage all listeners to share their own experiences and research on the show. That said, if anyone would like to be a guest on the show, or if you guys have an encounter or experience that you guys would like to share on the show, or possibly have me investigate, you guys can email us at bizarreencounters@outlook.com, or you guys can give the hotline a call, text, whatever way you guys want to get a hold of me. That number is 313-364-1551. And on the other side of that, of course, I forgot to mention in the first part of the news and the updates, I am also putting together an investigation team. I do have a link down in the show description that has a submission form for like an application for if you guys are interested in joining the team. So some of those encounters and stuff that we take in, if it's something that you guys want that team as it's getting established to investigate, that's definitely something that we're going to be working on. And on the other side, if you guys enjoyed the show and you guys think we deserve it, please leave a review or rating for the show on iTunes or Spotify. Your guys' continued support is what makes this show possible, and your opinions go a long way to help the show grow and improve. So I thank you guys for any review, ratings, suggestions, anything that you guys throw at the show. And what's the last thing, Orin?
I believe it's that all of this shit is listed in the motherfucking link tree in the show description.
And with that, let's hop into the show. Please welcome to the show, Wesley Coons, experiencer, author, podcaster, man of many titles now. How's it going today, man?
Hey, man, today's a great day. Thanks for having me on the show. You guys are awesome. Thanks for having me. It's been fun. So thank you.
No problem. Thanks for coming on tonight, Wes. Shane's told me a little bit about your story, and I'm kind of excited to dig into it. But before that, would you tell us a little bit about kind of your research and what you do and how you got into the world of the paranormal and the strange?
Sure. Well, my name's Wes Coons. I'm from Virginia Beach, and I've kind of got a unique story. Mine started with an incredibly haunted house, and which we're going to talk about tonight. And you fast forward through that, and after about 9 or 10 months, of surviving it, honestly, it was pretty bad. And then I found out I had these healing opportunities, these healing gifts. And, these days I talk to dead people more than I talk to live people. It's interesting. But, I've got a podcast, Enlightenment Unknown, Life of a Spiritual Nomad. And we're just started season 3. And that the first 2 seasons of that is going through incredible detail on the haunted house. So I left some things out that were really, really personal, but that was a hard journey because you remember, Shane, when we did the one episode with you, it was, it can be difficult for me. It's been a difficult process. So I am now a Reiki master quantum healing expert. I heal people around the world, and I've got clients in India and Spain and Japan. And so people come to me to heal things, and it's interesting. So, I went from a retired Marine to running a real estate company to getting my rear end kicked in this haunted house. And when it was over, God turned on these gifts for me, and I heal people and I change people through that. And so it's pretty fun.
Well, that's awesome. Before we dive into your haunted house story, I've got to ask you, since you said you're from Virginia Beach, have you ever gone to the Edgar Cayce Museum house, whatever, there in Virginia Beach?
I was there 2 days ago. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Me and my partner, Jenny, I guess it's probably been a couple summers ago now. We went for a weekend trip and really enjoyed it. We actually did a deep dive episode on the show. But so as soon as you said that, I was like, man, I got to ask you about it. So.
Yeah. So my healing space, they're at 67th Street at the beach, and I'm at 31st Street. So.
Oh, wow.
I drive past there every single day, man. There's some bizarre stuff that's happened at that place.
Yeah, when we were there, they were actually doing like a spiritual wellness type fair, and they had, vendors and all sorts of healers and things like that going on. So it was really cool. It was a great opportunity. We just so happened to kind of be there when they were doing it. But no, that's also, you might have been there for all.
I was going to say, I've been in a couple of those, man. I was upstairs doing free healings for people, 3-minute healings and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, you very well could have been there. We just didn't know each other yet, but that's awesome.
Small world, yeah.
See, if you end up making it back there, you'll have to make sure you look out for them.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. Hey, you guys ever come, the medicine woman Lakota comes here and does sweat lodges and stuff. Y'all need to come participate in one of those and do one of the lodges and stuff and record it. It'd be cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, it looked like they did a lot of cool seminars and, classes and things like that. Like I said, we're only a couple hours, 2-3 hours from Virginia Beach. We're in Raleigh, North Carolina. So it's basically right down the street from us.
Yeah, you are close. Yeah, you definitely have to come up. Lakota, she lives up in Abington, Virginia. So I don't know how far that is. That's like in the far edge of Virginia, almost into Tennessee where she lives. She does ceremonies and stuff up there too. It's pretty cool.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably 5-6 hours from us, but no, small world, like you said. Well, Wes, if you don't mind, would you dive into your haunted house story a little bit?
Yeah, man. I don't know. Gosh, I guess it's about 5 years ago now. I had bought this house. I was going to, I thought I was going to marry this girl and we're going to adopt her nephew. And, so I've always been a little sensitive if there's ghosts or something around. Mm-hmm. So for some reason, I kept going back to the house before we wrote the contract just to sit in this one area of the house, which ended up being it was a loft area. And the house was quite large. It was like 4,800 square feet. It was ridiculous. And, come to find out later, that was like the heart of the haunting was where I kept sitting, and I didn't realize that. So, fast forward, we bought the house, and schizophrenia actually turned on for the girl I was dating. It was a family trait, and it just kind of turned on. So, she left the relationship, and every time we would argue, you ever seen that movie? What's the one, The Shining, where you're in the hallway and you see the hallway like get really elongated?
Oh yeah,
I would see that when we would argue, and it was just so bizarre to me. But I think one of the, in the beginning, it was little things. It was, I would hear music in the wall. So I'd put my ear up against the wall and you couldn't hear anything, but you'd hear this 1920s music playing, and it was bizarre. And I would see things out, on the peripheral of my eyes, and I would look and you couldn't see anything. And, I felt like I was losing my mind. So, for some reason, I would hear things, and I look out the window and you see eyeballs staring at me. And then I remember one night I went outside and I left the door open. And when I came back, I heard a door slam upstairs. And I remember thinking to myself, I think I made a mistake. I think I let something in. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I did or what that was, but things got more and more bizarre at that point. So I think one of the defining moments in the beginning was I had a German Shepherd, New Yorkie. We were sitting there eating an ice cream sandwich in bed watching MASH or something, right? And we heard this lion's roar downstairs. And it was this god-awful scream. And I remember telling the dogs, go be a dog, protect the house. And they weren't moving. So I grabbed my weapon and went downstairs. And when I came around the corner, there was this demon standing there. It had horns in the eyes and everything. And I think it was as shocked to see me as I was to see it. And, it kind of ran towards me. And then upstairs, the Yorkie seen it, and she barked when it got upstairs, and I couldn't find it after that. But from that point on, I believe what happened is a portal had opened up in the dining room. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, there ended up being multiple portals in this house. So what we believe was happening, these demons accessed the home, and you can look on the security cameras and see, you can see this quite clearly behind me, but where the portals were so blurry, you couldn't see doors or pictures that were there that you should have easily seen. And so what we believe was happening is they were bringing entities into the house, spirits, and then the demons were absorbing them into themselves and becoming more and more powerful. Because, we had pictures of some of the demons. You get pictures of them, and you see all these souls inside them. It was really bizarre. So that night was awkward. And, it just kind of kept getting worse and worse and worse after that. So I think, I don't know, it was maybe 2 weeks later. During that 2 weeks, I started closing the bedroom doors as double doors, right? Mm-hmm. So they're like 3 feet. The doors were like 6 feet wide, and I'd tie a rope on them. And when you would sit in bed at night with the light on in the hallway, you could see people walking back and forth outside the door. So I put a camera out there, and you couldn't see anything. So it was mind-boggling. My sisters thought I was losing my mind, and my daughter wants me to be institutionalized, and I'm like, I said, I'll go, but what are these pictures that we're getting out the cameras? You could see things in the pictures. And this one night, I was sitting in bed eating ice cream sandwiches. You can lose 20 pounds eating ice cream sandwiches after a breakup, It's just sad, it's just not a good place. And there's these lights down in the dining room, and they're playing with the lights. So the lights would get so bright you couldn't see in the dining room, but they were Edison bulbs, and the Edison bulbs were only 40 watts. So this one night, I just got frustrated and went and I turned off the light switch and I said, "This is an effing house of God, kick rocks." And the whole energy of the house changed. That's the first time I ever experienced that. And there was this anger that was in the house. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, I think I just screwed up. I think I screwed up big time. And so by the time I got upstairs, there was a big foyer area outside the bedroom and it started to fill up with fog, right? And I remember, I started texting some friends and, I closed the door and I tied the door shut. And, pretty quickly through the security camera, you couldn't see much. You could just see, if you think about looking at a camera that's filled with fog, you could see that. And there was voices as loud as ours outside the door. You could hear music clearly playing in the house. You could hear people walking up and down the stairs, but there was something in the hallway that was walking down the hallway that weighed 600 or 700 pounds. It was huge. And so it was big enough when it was stepping, the entire upstairs was shaking. The curtain or the lampshades and stuff were vibrating from it. And, I'm texting my friends. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I was pretty scared. And they're like, call the police. I'm like, hello, 911. Yeah, I'm not crazy. I mean, how do you do that? So,
right.
That night was, when the lion's roar happened, it changed everything. But that night was really, really bad. And so, I'm sitting on the end of my bed and I can hear this thing coming down the hallway. And I have my 45 out, like, what's that going to do? Right.
Uh-huh.
So it stopped and turned. You could hear it stop in front of the door and turn. And when you look at the door jamb where you should be able to see light around both the door jambs, the one door jamb was black. There was no light. So it was bigger than the 3-foot door. It was blocking the complete light from the light outside, and the security camera didn't see it. And I remember saying, I was probably cussing a little bit. I said I was going to go kick his ass, right? And right when I said that, I grabbed my weapon and it kicked the door. And I remember how scared I was at that point. That, it was bad enough I was freaked out with the other stuff, but now, it was able to manifest moving something. I'd never experienced that before. And it kicked the door, and I just remember being terrified, man. It was a terrifying night. So I wouldn't recommend it. So.
That's pretty crazy.
Hold on tight, guys. We're going to take a quick commercial break, but
if you guys want to stay up to date with the show, follow Bizarre Encounters on Instagram and Facebook, and Open Minds Media on YouTube, Telegram, and the TikToks.
Now feel free to fast forward through these commercials so we can get back into the show. And now back to the show.
So, I heard you earlier in the story talking about your theory about these things kind of coming through the portals. What's your opinion on how these portals are created, that these things were coming through?
I'm not 100% sure. What we believe happened with that house was with the land. Back in the day, a couple hundred years ago, that was like a peninsula where ships could come in and offload their cargo. And I had several people that were psychic say that they felt that there was a slave ship there, and there's some people that died on the ship, and they just threw them into a makeshift grave. And one of the things that we did when we bought the house is there was a problem with the swimming pool, so I moved it a little bit. We put a new pool in. And even the priest said at one point, Father Munford came and the church, and he kept saying, everybody kept going back to the pool. There's something wrong with the pool. There's something wrong with the pool. And, we believe that we disturbed that. Now, I at some point ended up meeting the two daughters of the guy that built the house. And they wouldn't tell me if he died in the house. They wouldn't answer that question. I believe he died on the steps.
Okay.
But they would say where he would sit in this area, that was the loft area. She said that, Dad would sit there for hours and hours and hours and just act bizarre. And like a glass would shatter, but the glass would fly 22 feet across the room and hit the one girl. I mean, how does that happen? And, but none of the experiences that I had with mine. So I'm not exactly sure how that portal opened, but it definitely did.
Kind of another question too to lead off of that. So you just said that your girlfriend, wife at the time, she started developing schizophrenia. Was this before or after you had dug up and moved the pool? Because I've talked to a few people that have kind of studied schizophrenia from a different perspective and have kind of correlated it more with like a demonic attachment, where basically these demons get inside people's heads and basically convince them that they are one with themselves, and in turn they end up basically fully letting them in. So I'm kind of curious if maybe that may have been what kind of kicked in the schizophrenia, and this whole event may have started happening a little bit sooner than maybe you kind of realized, that maybe it targeted her first and then it came after you when she was out of the picture.
Yeah, I think it did. I think it did. I believe that. At one point she had come in the house. We'd been broken up for probably a month or so, and things were starting to be weird in the house. And she came over, and she was upstairs, and at that loft area, I had built a custom closet for her. And dude, she just stopped and she just stared at this thing, just like she froze in place, like she was having a fluid conversation in her mind with something. And for like a minute and a half, and finally I'm like, hey, are you okay? And it was the strangest thing I'd ever seen, at least at that point. And she's like, oh, yeah, I'm fine. And, and she said something smart ass and left. And, I think it did. Come to find out, I guess she was doing cocaine and stuff that wasn't a normal thing, at least that I knew of when we were dating. So something changed. And, then you're doing that level of drugs. When you drink, your soul goes out of your body a little bit. When you do those kind of drugs, it steps fully out. So things can easily access you and take over. Later, come to find out, she is diagnosed with 8 personality disorders.
Wow.
And, or 8 personalities, excuse me. So, somebody told me the other day that she finally got out of jail, got on some medication, met somebody. She's now married. So I'm happy for her, from a distance. I love her from a distance. I don't want to wish any ill will, but yeah, she spent the next 3 years in and out of jail at that point.
See, it seems like a lot of the time too, like certain harder drugs seem to correlate with like demonic activity. Like one in particular, everybody that ends up doing meth, they talk about how like these demons end up talking to them. They get inside their head and stuff. Like I'm pretty much convinced at this point that some of these drugs were actually like the process was created by demonic intervention, that there was something else that was kind of instilling these people on how to create these drugs. And in turn, it ends up creating another doorway where these things can manipulate and get in. And I mean, it's a totally shifted perspective too, that it's like, you don't typically hear about these problems with like cannabis or like mushrooms or like these more like earthy, like natural type things. But when you start getting into these like heavy chemically processed things, then all of a sudden people start having these like really dark thoughts, really dark demonic activity attached to them. And I think that again, it's influenced by them in the first place for these things to have been created. Or even if you don't necessarily believe in demons, like whatever these darker beings are, I think that they influence the creation of these drugs. And then once they get into somebody's head, it just opens that doorway where they can just kick it full stream. And if you already have some underlying issues, those ones always come out. And then it just, again, completely kicks open the door for these things.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know if you've seen where they're talking about that, water has a mirror image. Like I can take this bottle of water and I can put a picture, of a dog next to it for 30 seconds and they freeze it and you can see the dog in the water. Have you seen that?
I have not seen that before.
Dude, you Google that, you'll see it. And so what they're saying is like if you drink that one, there's certain drinks that have the word death on it and stuff like that or different things. So, what they're saying is the vibration, because we're 80, 90% water, whatever that is. So if we're drinking this water and we're talking negatively into this water, or we're putting it next to a negative picture, you're going to ingest that negative stuff. So if it can do that, when you think about when they're making these drugs, they're probably a pretty negative places there. The energy's got to be heavy. The people have got to be dark. So their negative thoughts, their negative stuff, the demons that are in them are going into this drug and it comes over. One of the things the priest was talking about is when our warriors, when we go into combat, they place curses on us because they might not be able to kill that SEAL Team 6 guy that's in that wherever he's at doing his job. but they can place a curse on him, then bring and that comes back and destroys the family unit. So Father Munford talks about where we have to break the curses that are placed against our warriors. And I thought it was interesting hearing him talk about that, and, did I tell you in the first episode when I was in the first Gulf War that somebody's putting a curse on our unit? Did we talk about that?
No, we didn't. We didn't get too far into your military background. We talked about it a little bit to kind of lay the groundwork of where you were coming from, but we didn't really get too far into any of your stories with it.
Yeah. So we had, you want to hear that?
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, it was the first Gulf War, so it was a little different than it is now. We didn't have the car bombings and stuff. So, the locals could kind of come into our unit area a little easy. And, one day we're in formation. I was with 2nd Tank Battalion, and I was a tow gunner unit. So we blew up tanks, and, all the locals just started to run away. And I'm like, that doesn't look right to me. So, I grabbed one of the locals, and he didn't like that I grabbed him. But I'm like, hey, why is everybody running? Oh, I can't talk. I'm like, okay, so we're going to stand right here until maybe you learn English, because you just was talking English like 3 minutes ago. And he said, look, that guy over there is like a medicine man or something. He's putting a curse on your unit. And so I let him go. And, one of the things we did that probably wasn't politically correct is we got ham chunks in our MREs, our meals ready to eat. And the ham chunks were kind of gross. And so we saved them for when we came across the prisoners that were Muslim. And then we would give them the ham chunks because we were dysfunctional. And we wanted to see if they would eat the ham versus
psychological warfare.
Yeah. What's more important, your religion or whatever. I didn't say it's right. We were young men making bad decisions, but that's what we did. And so I pulled that ham chunk out and I threw it and I hit him in the head. And so I think I got myself some extra curses off of that day, but it kind of ran him off. And one of the things that was going on with me during this is I had a curse placed on me, and the demonic energy, these energies were called jinn. And jinn is very, very powerful, and I'm not disrespecting them, but they're very, very powerful, and they're from the Middle East. And it was extraordinarily difficult for the healers that were working with me. Sandra Grace Brooks helped me a lot, and she passed away about 2 years ago. But, going in and removing those curses, because one of the things I found out through this process is, I had dark energies in me. I was molested as a child, and that person had placed something in me. And so going through this process, I had 2 exorcisms, and then I had a rebirthing ceremony with the medicine woman that really cleared everything out and got all the darkness that was in me out. So, I would not recommend an exorcism. It is not fun. So,
wow, that's pretty insane. So I've kind of got a thought theory question, I guess, to throw out there, kind of piggybacking off of, this idea about negative energies and whatnot. So a lot of what you said in your story is kind of similar to some experiences that my partner Jenny had. She lived in an apartment before we lived together now. And it was by a man-made lake. So again, kind of your pool situation, disturbing the earth, this whole water idea. And in that apartment, like you said, things started kind of slowly, and then the activity escalated, and it got to the point where she was basically, at least a couple times a week at night being terrorized by something. And at one point in time, I even saw like a shadow person type figure in the apartment. And like you said about your ex-girlfriend kind of like looking up in the corner of the closet, like when I saw this thing, it was like in the corner of the kitchen, like above where the refrigerator would be. Yeah. So just a whole lot of similarities with your story and things that she experienced. And, some of it, like I said, even I saw. And, we had talked a lot about kind of the same things about, the earth being disrupted and, these man-made bodies of water, whether that be a swimming pool or like this lake, tend to be kind of hotbeds for this type of activity. So I don't know if I necessarily had a question there, but just, something I wanted to throw out there and kind of get your thoughts.
No, but that's true. You don't know what was there before. And I mean, let's be honest. They like all the floods down in North Carolina, what that happened like 6 months ago.
Yeah.
All those graveyards have been disrupted. And I heard people, I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard people saying that, some of the coffins had come up out of the ground and stuff. Dude, I ain't going nowhere near that, bro. I've experienced that type of stuff, and who knows what happened in that pit. There is a diving place a couple hours from here called Lake Phoenix. You ever heard of it?
No, I haven't.
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's like some kind of rock quarry, and the water's crystal clear. I mean, it's as clear as this bottle of water. But dude, that place is so freaking haunted. There's so many ghosts there.
It's that quarry. It's the stone. It all retains within that rock.
Something, yeah. I was down there, and I mean, I got out of the truck. I was there 13 seconds probably. I looked at my friend. I said, dude, this place is super haunted. And right when I said that, something hit me in the chest and shoved me against the truck. I'm like, man. So I didn't scuba dive that weekend. Honestly, I was scared to get in the water. And so I remember I woke up, it was like 2 a.m, and I went for a walk, and they have this pier that goes out there. The place is beautiful. Just really, it's pretty, but there's a lot of activity there. And, there was something walking back and forth on the pier with like boots on or something. You can clearly hear somebody walking on that, and there was nothing there. So we ended up going back the next year, and I got in the water, and I did what I needed to do to get certified. And I'm like, I'm not going back to this place. I'm good, So, but it's a trippy place. It's beautiful.
All right, y'all, we got to take a break and pay some bills.
But if you guys hate ads, well, you guys can get ad-free and early access on Patreon for just $1 a month. And it's a great way to support the show. And if you'd like to get some extra video content and merch store discounts, there are a few other tiers with additional benefits with 7-day free trials available for most.
And now back to the show. Well, there's also a man-made lake in Georgia. I believe it's called Lake Lanier. And it's supposed to be like super haunted too, and like supposedly cursed. And there's just like this whole history of like just strange deaths and things happening. And like you're talking about with the graves, I think there's like an entire town that's below the lake where they basically flooded it to create this lake. So obviously it sounds like from just what we've been talking about tonight, steer clear of man-made bodies of water, it seems.
Just to throw into this one, too. So back when I was a kid, my mom's boyfriend at the time, her parents had like one of those just dugout ponds in their backyard. And it was weird because at night, you'd see these like dark shadows moving around the back half of the pond. So it's like, it makes you wonder if it's a matter of almost anywhere that there's land, something has happened there at some point. And if you stir it up, even if everything's been calm, everything's peaceful, even if you don't find a burial ground or anything there, like something has happened there at some point, that there is something attached to that land, be it like an elemental spirit, something that just has a reason to be there. And as soon as you stir up the land, like it's just all done with at that point. Like, I don't feel like there's too much you can do unless you start getting into, again, the spiritual factor of how to get rid of these things. But if you don't believe in this stuff, it's like, you're just going to sit there and watch these dark shadows on the back of your pond or on the back of your pool and just not be able to do anything about it, essentially.
That's true. I mean, there's a neighborhood here in Virginia Beach that I think there was some Native American burial grounds or something back in there. I've been in real estate 31 years. I ain't showing real estate in that neighborhood. I ain't going in there. I'm not going to take a listing. I'm not going to bring a buyer. I just stay out of it. And I've been uncomfortable in that neighborhood. My spiritual awakening was 5 years ago, and I've been honestly scared to go in that neighborhood for 20 years. I'm like, there's something is wrong there, and I don't like it. I ain't going there. And you go down this road, you cross under the expressway, and there's these really big homes. And to me, it's almost like you're crossing into another dimension. It's bizarre. I'm not going there.
Yeah, it's almost like you have to keep your head straight as much as possible, because when you deal with these types of things, the way that they seem to work is that they'll find whatever your little niche is, and then they'll just completely dwell on that. Like if you have, again, like a borderline of like schizophrenia, or you've had it in the family, or you just have it in your mindset, they know that that's an entry point in. And I know for like you, for an example, like we'll probably get into it a little bit more in your story, but you talk about this, like basically this isolated feeling, and considering that you came from one, having the issues when you were a kid, and then you came into the military and stuff, I think that they full well know that you had like your demons in life, and you have like this, like, I don't want to say fear of like loneliness, but like they know that they can isolate you, and that's where, you're going to end up falling into your most trauma. So I think that they intentionally tried to push your girlfriend out of the house because they knew that once they isolated you, that they could basically try to like run over you as much as they possibly can, because they figure out what everybody's little niche is, and then they just dwell on that and expand it as much as possible.
Yeah. And, you know, I think that's part of it. And I think there's other entities there that wanted her to be there. And I think they got kind of angry that she wasn't, right? Because she's easily manipulated. And, you know, one of the demons that she has in her, and it showed itself to me, was, you ever seen that movie Friday, Devo, the really big black guy?
Yep.
Yep. It looked like him as a really muscular, like 6'4" black man. And it showed itself to me a couple different times. And one of the behaviors that she started doing is dressing like the guy in the TV show. You know, she'd wear the dirty clothes. She would smoke these weird cigarettes. She would put on a gold chain. And I'm just like, you know, it was bizarre. And not trying to stereotype anybody, but that's she looked and acted like he did in the TV show. And then 10 minutes later, she would come out and she would be dressed in her pretty shoes and want to go to dinner or something. I'm like, you know, what just happened? You know, who's that? And it was bizarre. It was bizarre to experience.
See, I think with stuff like that, they know that there's a person who's not sure of themselves. So in turn, they use that against them, where if they aren't comfortable with themselves, they aren't sure about who they are, they know that they can manipulate them and start putting these thoughts into their head of thinking that, you know, maybe this is a trait you like, maybe this is a trait you like. The next thing you know, they have the person so mentally scattered between who am I, that boom, again, that's just a leeway right in. Because half the time it's like you have to be set with who you are, set in stone, and hold your ground. And if you're not capable of doing that, they're going to find a way to manipulate that.
Yeah. Well, somebody said one day to me, she said, Wes, you know, these things have 10,000 years of experience. You know, you've got like 14 days. And so, you know, they could look at you and know that you have a drug addiction or an alcohol addiction or a sexual addiction or something of that nature. And then they can magnify that. You know, for me, it was my lower back. You know, I had back pain, and you know, I'd be in that house and I'd be in extreme pain. And you know, in my healing business now, you know, one of the things, if somebody comes in and they've got neck and pain down their spine, typically that's a spiritual attachment, and I'll just go up there and I can grab it and just pull it out. And I worked on a guy tonight. He said it felt like a knife in his shoulder for years. And when I grabbed it and pulled it out, it was from his little girl's mother. I clearly heard her say, that is my only connection with him. Leave it. And I said, you know, you can't stay. And when I pulled it out, his whole body just slumped over. And I'm like, could you feel that? And he says, man, whatever you just pulled out of me, just, you know, I'm not in pain anymore. And so, you know, so that was not an embodiment. That was an attachment. So there's different things. I see all kinds of crazy things. Like I clear people's houses of dark energies and stuff all the time now. You know, that's one of the biggest things I do for work nowadays. And the fun thing is I can fix your house in Toledo without knowing the address, go in there or whatever. I can, as you talk about it, I can see it. Like when you were talking about your girl and being tormented in the house, one of the things that showed me was 2 eyeballs up underneath the bed. So I don't know if the bedroom underneath the bed was a hot spot for you or not. But that's one of the
so I never experienced anything like in the actual bed when I was there. But yeah, she had, without getting too deep into it, she had a lot of experiences in the bed. So that's kind of interesting that you point that out specifically.
Yeah, so they show me things. No.
Wow.
Like Shane's grandmother is talking to me all day. How long has your grandmother been gone?
She passed away when I was in 7th grade. So it's been at least like 15, 16 years now.
Yeah. So makes life interesting. So. Yeah. But you know, that movie where that little boy says, I see dead people. All my friends laugh all the time. We'll go out to dinner or something. And they're like, what are you looking at or whatever? I was like, oh, you know, there's this dead person over there. And I'm just like, you know, go on.
People before what dogs are looking randomly off into space. There's a reason for it.
Yeah. Oh, our animals definitely see it. My German Shepherd Abby, she's in doggy daycare all day today, so she's sleeping right now. But the first day I had her, I took her into Home Depot, part of her socializing. I mean, she was like 10 pounds or whatever, and we're walking down the aisles, and she stopped and looked down this one aisle, and she's looking, and I'm like, come on, and she wouldn't go. So I looked, and then with my human eyes, then I kind of connected and looked. Well, there's this demonic energy that was sitting in the aisleway down there, and so I brought in one of my guides and stuff and had it cleared out. And literally the second in my mind I seen it grab what was there, the dog goes and just walks off. I mean, the exact instant. I'm like, how is that possible? If it's not real, how's it possible that the dog at that exact moment is just like, okay, but she can see demons and stuff. Now that she's getting older, she doesn't try to fight them. We'll go somewhere and she'll lose her shit over something. I'm like, you can't bite the guy with the demon in him. All right. So, yeah. No.
Well, before you had this kind of experience in your home, were you into the paranormal and like all this kind of strangeness, or did that kind of kickstart this whole endeavor?
Dude, we wouldn't be talking about none of this stuff. Nope. I mean, it was not of interest to me. Mm-hmm. I barely watch scary movies, and as far as like having healing abilities and talking about God and stuff like that, we ain't gonna have that conversation. Mm-hmm. So, I always called it hippie shit, and it just wasn't my cup of tea. I honestly, I didn't 100% believe whether God was real or not. I didn't go to church. The only time I went was a funeral or for a wedding. And, the funny thing, when I go to church, I was always significantly uncomfortable. And now I know why, because I had something inside me, which I didn't realize. And so as we're going through this haunted house, I didn't realize I was going through a spiritual awakening. I didn't realize that these gifts were turning on. So, I did some research, and, I've seen instances where somebody is in a car accident, they come out of a coma, and all of a sudden they're psychic or something. And so traumatic experiences can turn that on. And I guess this traumatic experience turned that on for me. And for me at the time, I mean, every gift there was, I have, but it was on 100%. I would shake somebody's hand, and if they had something in them, dude, I could see like a black snake going in my skin and crawling up in my arm. And it felt like something was there. It was horribly painful. Because I was so energetically open, things could just access me with little to no effort. Mm-hmm. And so I think relatively early on, they basically had like roaches crawling on me the entire time. You couldn't, a couple people could see them. The medicine woman could see them. I think Sandra Grace could see them. But, they would crawl in my eyes, my ears. And one of the things, being abused as a little boy, there was a lot of pain in the backside from that. And that was a spot where they would focus on and make me uncomfortable. And it took me back to that victim energy of that little boy that was hurt. And it really messed with me at a super, super high level. I ended up talking to this lady, from Madagascar, excuse me. And she told me that not to go stay in the house anymore. If I stayed in the house, they could kill me. But if I stayed out of the house, they couldn't. So I think one of the things they tried to do was torment me to the level where I did take my own life. And, there was many times during that time period, many nights that I laid in bed with my weapon in my hand, trying to figure out how to do that. And I'm like, how do I end this pain and not go to hell and not destroy my kids? Mm-hmm. So I'm grateful I did not do that.
That's like that stuff where they're trying to purposefully look for the things that they can inch their way in, because I'm sure that while a lot of that was happening, I'm sure that they brought up a lot of your trauma that you had from, being in a war first and foremost. And then second of all, I mean, when you get into a lot of this like ritualistic trauma stuff about opening gateways, a lot of it kind of goes back to that like childhood trauma that you had experienced. So I feel like even without the person that may have been involved with that knowing it, they may have opened up that spiritual gate because again, that's like a rudimentary part when you start digging into a lot of this like occult practice, is that you break that barrier as a small child really, really early.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you know, one of the things I talk about in my podcast is finding the beauty in the pain. And so, you know, everything, there's a lesson in everything. Like, you know, like the last relationship I had, you know, I mean, I've never been hurt like this relationship hurt me, but, you know, she broke me open at such a deep level. And I'm so grateful and thankful for that, because, you know, there were so many little aspects of myself that I didn't heal that I got to look at. So, you know, if you think about that, every relationship you've ever been in, you know, that person has a notepad on his or her chest of everything that's hurt you. And if you read the book, The Four Agreements, one of the things they talk about is, you know, one of the things they talk about is somebody came up and said, "Hey, Shayn, you're fat." You know, that might be a jerk statement, but if you're sitting there festering over it for 6, 8 months, 2, 3 years, that's because you believed that you're fat. You know, so so what they did is they let you know that is something that you need to heal. And the other instances, they're just being a jerk, and it's like, whatever, man, you know, move on. But, you know, if it stays with you, that's an unhealed trauma. So that person, you know, the lies, the manipulation and all that stuff it's a direct reflection of who you are. So where do you lie to yourself? You know, I might not lie to my significant other, but I lie to myself saying that I'm ugly, weak, or stupid, that I can't have this, I can't do that, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not whatever. You know, a lie is a lie. So you bring in the reflection of yourself. So, you know, going through this process, that's something I really focused on a lot.
Hold on tight, guys. We'll be back with that bizarre stuff you crave. But
if you would like to rock some gear for your favorite podcast or creature, hop on over to the OMM merch store for a wide range of designs with new drops regularly.
The most recent design available is the SQUATCH Country Fear and Loathing parody design, with Sasquatch as Hunter S. Thompson and Mothman as Dr. Gonzo, with artwork by Chris Holm of the Conspiracy Theory podcast. And we are back with the high strangeness. Let's get back into it. So kind of continuing from your story to the point where you've kind of pushed this thing back and you're able to get to the point that you're at now. I know that I don't know if you'd actually mentioned on this show, but you mentioned that you were staying outside of the house. You were staying in your RV at the time. Just to kind of fill in the listeners a little bit, what was the next step after that, where you were able to push this thing out and actually get back in your house and you weren't stuck staying in your RV anymore? And then also the other question I was going to ask, being outside of the house and being in your RV, would they still manipulate your thoughts and kind of get you to that point where you were thinking about ending your own life, even just being on the property and being like within the atmosphere of the house itself?
Sure. You know, up to this probably started in February, up till July 4th weekend. If I stepped through the threshold of the house, literally the instant I crossed that, they manipulated my thoughts. All I thought about was pulling the trigger and doing cocaine. That's all I could think about in the house. I would step out of that and I would be back to my own thoughts. So that was the only time they really could manipulate my mind at that level. We did that lady from Madagascar told us one of the unique things that I still haven't been able to figure out is every time we would do a healing session on that place, it would get better for a day or two, then it would come back stronger. And the lady from Madagascar knew that. And she had said, stop doing ceremonies. And we did a big ceremony just before 4th of July weekend. And that gave the house enough power that they could then follow me off property. So I had been living on the property on the other side. There's like an acre lot. So I was just sleeping in the camper, and, you know, I'd wake up if I got in the house like really, really early to take a shower. It was like, you know, the activity was minimal. So I had this 2x4 that I would stick in the door because I was scared that they would lock the door and lock me in. And there was a bathroom right there. So I'd go in and take literally like a 1 or 2 minute shower and then run out of there. I was terrified to be in that house. And so that's about the time things started crawling on me. And I realized that weekend that we'd really made a mistake, and they could follow me. So they could follow me at that point. You know, I would see them. They were in my camper. If I stayed in a hotel room, you'd see them in the hotel. They couldn't necessarily alter my thoughts, but they just tormented me nonstop. So, you know, we did several things at the house, trying to fix the house. I ended up meeting. It was funny. I was talking to a friend of mine. You want to hear about one of the exorcisms?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Dude, the exorcisms were fucked up. Sorry.
No, you're good. We swear enough on this show. You're good.
Okay, cool. I'm trying not to be PG, but man, so
tell us about the fucking exorcism.
Thanks, man. Yeah. I was sitting in my camper, and there's a friend of mine, Danny. I met Danny as a young man, and he called me checking on me because people knew something was going on with me. They didn't understand. He's like, "Hey, what's going on?" I said, "Hey, Danny." I said, if you come across somebody,
you're good. Take your time.
Thanks. That can do an exorcism. Let me know, right? And he says, "You're kidding me." I'm like, "No." I said, because I'm thinking for the house. I don't know what to call it. I mean, dude, you know how many hours I had on the computer? Ghostbusters.com is not a real website, or at least not for this stuff. And, everybody that you reach out to, they just wanted to come and film it. And I didn't want to make it a circus. I wanted it fixed. So it was hard to get that. So that's one of the reasons why I'm vocal about the work that I do and stuff, because I can fix a lot of this stuff. And or I know people that can. So, he says, my neighbor is a minister, and he was in my front yard this morning. He looked at me just out of the blue. He says, "If you know anybody that needs an exorcism, give them my number." And tell me that's not God connecting the dots, right?
Wow.
Oh, absolutely.
So long story short, I talked to this cat and kind of blow him off a little bit because I don't know. I didn't know what I was doing. And he called me like 2-3 weeks later. And he says, "Son, let's fix this tonight." And I'm like, what? He knew I had something, but I didn't know that. So I called my buddy Ty, and I was like, "Hey, man." And Ty and I are pretty tight. We did everything together. Every night we would have dinner together and hang out because I was scared to go home. And so, I'd drop him off 10, 11 o'clock at night. Then, I'd sit in I say one of my chapters of my thing is homeless in my Maserati. So I'd sit in my Maserati in a parking lot till I couldn't stay awake anymore because I was scared to go home. And when it was dark out like that, I could see things walking around, but nothing really messed with me if I was quiet and I had the radio off and the car off, you know what I mean? And so we're going, and where we're going is from Virginia Beach to Chesapeake is 15 minutes away. And, after about 45 minutes, he's like, "Dude, how far are we going?" I said, "Oh, once we cross the bridge, it's right there." He's like, "We crossed the bridge 30 minutes ago." So I guess I was incorrect when I said they didn't manipulate my thoughts. They manipulated my thoughts this time. And when I started to pay attention, it was showing this tape of the same 10, 15 seconds of the road over and over and over. And finally, I'm like, kind of shook my head and got out of it. And, we had gone almost to another city over, and we turn around. So we go back to where this church is. And, it's not a regular church. It was, it was in an industrial area where the guy had church. So, you're not going into what you think a normal church looks like. And we walked in there, and the energy was really, really bizarre in his office. And, you can see rats running across the place and snakes. And obviously I was the only one seeing those. And it was like walking in through pudding. It was so thick, and it was slow motion. It was really bizarre. And so I pulled my phone out because one of the things I did was I'd take pictures of these things all the time because I wanted to have pictures of it. I felt like it helped me not feel like I'm losing my mind, right? And, the minister was a real jerk. And he's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" I'm like, I didn't realize he had already started the process. And I was just like, okay. Aren't you supposed to be spiritual and holy? Fuck, dude. And he says, sit down, give me your phone. So he gives me the phone. And so it's these two guys and Ty and myself, and we're sitting in these chairs in this, probably a 15 by 15 room. And dude, there was just literally, you can see rats running all over stuff. And nobody was paying attention to me talking, which I thought was bizarre. And
almost like being in like a tunnel or something, it feels like.
Yeah. I was like in another dimension or something, and now I thought I was there like 3 or 4 hours, and Ty came on the show about a month and a half ago. He says, man, we were there like 45 minutes. I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, it felt like we were there a long time. I don't know. I feel like he was wrong in his time, but I could be wrong. I don't know. I mean, I was the one with delusional, not him. So, I mean, I got my German Shepherd in the truck and it's hot. So I was kind of worried about her, if the engine turned off or whatever. And so the minister just starts freaking saying these prayers and I could not control the left-hand side of my body. It's just like in the movies. I mean, my arm was like crazy up in the air and it just hurt. It was painful. It was so painful, man. When I worked with the other priest, he'd throw holy water on me, and just like in the movies, it felt like hot grease hitting your skin. And the amount of pain. I mean, being a Marine, you get used to pain, but nothing like this. And, at some point, I don't remember anything. And, but I just remember screaming in pain. And then I kind of came, I had some clarity. And I remember I was looking down, and the minister guy says, what are you doing? What are you looking for? I said, I'm looking for some scissors. And he said, what for? I said, because I'm going to kill all three of you motherfuckers. And I remember saying that, and I was mortified, Because honestly, I think if I had scissors at that time, I would have killed him. And Ty's pretty funny. He's like, yeah, I remember that. And he's like, he says they all kind of slid their chairs back a little bit because I'm not little, I mean, I'm 6'1", 235 pounds, and, they're all a little bit smaller than me. I'm like, I'll fuck all three of y'all out real quick. And, but, he kept asking, what's your name? What's your name? And I think at one time I heard the name George, and he says, it isn't George. And he said, Jesus, torture this demon inside of that man. And I just remember leaning back and just screaming because it was so painful. And at one point he said its name. I'm not going to repeat the name. I don't tell that to anybody. And
gives more power to it if you call it by its name.
Yeah, and it could come back, I guess, but fuck that dude, fuck him. He ain't getting that from me. And it's funny. I have to actually try to remember what it is, but I'm not gonna remember it now. Yeah, I'm not gonna say it. But in my mind, I'm like, oh, cool. He's got his name. We're good. Well, then it started calling it by his name. So he's like, hey, Timmy. And it wasn't Timmy, but. Then the pain was like 10 times worse, and I guess, they talk about in the Bible, once it says its name, you can command it to leave. And I mean, at some point it finally left. And every time, I had several instances where something left me and it felt like somebody had peeled skin off your back. It was incredibly painful. And so it left, and I was just exhausted. And we're talking to the guy, and he's like, is there any more in there? And I knew there was more in there, but I couldn't do anymore. I'm like, fuck this, dude. I'm good. And so I'm lying to myself saying I'm okay. But Sandra Grace was saying that she called them the big bubbas. The big ones are going to push out the little ones. So the big one that's in charge is going to throw out somebody, let him get sacrificed or whatever. And then people think they've done something and go away. So we finished that up. I never did understand where it went, right? When I do healing work, and I've done things of that nature a little bit differently, I've had a lady on my table where this demon showed up, and you can see its face. I literally had its horns, and her husband standing there, and I'm like wrestling this thing that's in this lady. She's screaming, and I'm trying to pull this fucking thing out. And it was like when I first started doing healing work, I'm like, dude, I ain't prepared for this. It was crazy. But, I've seen some crazy things. but there's always where you send it to the foot of Jesus. It goes somewhere. And I thought it was interesting that I asked Danny about a year ago. I said, hey, whatever happened to that dude? He said, he basically moved out of town overnight and we've never heard from him again. So I just wonder if he made a mistake doing that kind of work. Because you got to know what you're doing, brother. Mm-hmm. You don't go in there and fuck around, because you're going to find out. And I kept asking, where did it go? And he said, don't worry about it. And I only talked to him once or twice after that. But, it was weird when we went outside. I was covered in sweat, and it was, August, so it was hot. But, I was just, it was like I was in a cool breeze. And, it was interesting because it was right across. It was right across the street from where my kids went to school, And at that time, I was, just finishing a really bad divorce and stuff. So I don't know. It was a bizarre place for that to happen. And, but yeah, the first one was painful. The second one sucked too. So.
Did you notice that these exorcisms tended to do anything, or did you kind of feel like they more so like stirred stuff up? Because you brought up the idea about how it will throw out the littlest one, and then the bigger one's still going to be hiding in the back somewhere. So at least from your experiences with these exorcisms, like, did you feel like it stirred stuff up more than it actually helped?
I felt like there was a bit of a relief that something happened, but it really, things continued to get worse. Things continue, I still had stuff crawling on me. I knew it wasn't finished. I knew he didn't do everything, but there was no way I was going back in there. There's got to be a different way. I mean, I could not have it that night. And, it was a lot. So, there was, when the priest came to the house trying to fix the house, he was throwing holy water on me and burning my skin, and my arm was going crazy and I couldn't control it. That happened there too. Then when we did another exorcism at the church, I had the same experience, and something came out of me there. And, that was pretty painful too. But it wasn't until the medicine woman did a rebirthing ceremony that fixed it. So we can talk about that if you want to hear about it.
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure. So,
hold that thought. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And we are back to the show. So let's hop right in.
We were up in Abington, Virginia, is where Lakota lives. And I'd met her probably in June sometime. And she said she couldn't do the ceremony till September. So it seemed like everybody that said they could do something, it was always 2 or 3 months down the line. And I believe all of that happened. I believe that God allowed that happen to me, because in my mind, when I started seeing the demons, I started to think, I was like, well, if there's demons, I mean, is God real? You can't, in my logical mind, I'm like, you can't have one without the other. I mean, they talk about that shit, they're both there. And so, he took me through this process, and he had to make it painful because I'm a retired Marine and I'm hard-headed. And, if the burning bush is sitting there, Shayn, I'm your grandmother and I love you, you're going to be like, fuck off. It's not going to change you at the core level where I needed to be changed. And so, just like the Marine Corps broke me down to nothing and rebuilt me, that's what God did too here. And so, of course, I had to wait till September. And, she had invited me up to her mountain. She said, I've got this medicine wheel. If you come up here, you can sit in it and they're not going to crawl on you. And I was so desperate. The next day I drove 8 hours, and Ty and I went up there. And, this medicine wheel is a giant circle of stones, and it's broken into 4 directions, east, south, west, and north. And she sings this beautiful song, dude. You've got to experience it, man. It is like there's 20 speakers around this. It's a giant rock with all these rocks on it. And she would sing these songs, and it was like these microphones were blowing your ears out, but it didn't hurt. And you could see the energy in the air vibrating. It was bizarre. But when I sat in that medicine wheel, they didn't crawl on me. So I started going up there all the time because that was the only relief I could get. So then when I was doing that, I would look at the clouds, and the clouds would shape shift into demonic energies and stuff just to mess with me. And so September came around, and it was me, Ty, Jackie, and Dee. We're going to do the ceremony together. And, there was like 9 people showed up down at a friend's house at the bottom of the mountain to support me, and, took off work and did all this stuff. And I was a total stranger, and they did all that for me. So, seeing that unconditional love that they brought to the table was, I didn't realize it at the time because I was just, I was in a bad spot, and I was fucking mean and angry, and I just couldn't see a lot of things. And so we went up there, and I had to dig my own grave, and that messed with me, as being a Marine. One of the things, I've seen, and, we've seen in movies and stuff where they make you dig the grave, then the enemy kills you and puts you in your grave. And I was always like, fuck you, motherfucker. You ain't doing that to me. I am not going to get on my knees while you say whatever you're going to say and then cut my head off. You might kill me, but I am not doing that, And so for me to agree to that, was a big thing for me. And, so as I'm digging this grave that I was in for 18 hours, Ty and everybody created a sacred fire, but I didn't realize they're going to have to do this drum beat. And the drum beat sounds like a heartbeat, it's like that for 18 hours straight. And, so we dig the grave, and she did some ceremonial stuff, and it was really hot out. So I didn't get necessarily buried, but I was in a tarp, and she put some dirt over the tarp and stuff because, try not to kill me in 100-degree heat that weekend. And for me, that was like the easiest part of everything I went through. And somewhere around 2:00 in the morning, Dee seen it leave my grave. And she said it had hoofs about 8 or 10 inches across. It was like this horse-looking thing with this demonic head on it. And she said it was like 8 feet tall. Wow. And so it left me, it went through the sacred fire. My German Shepherd Kennedy had been really tormented by the demons. I mean, she looked like she's ready to die. And it walked through her and went down to the medicine wheel and left. And, I woke up in the morning, and Ty's like, dude, he said, you look fucking fantastic. I'm like, do I? And the Kennedy comes running around. She looked like she was 2 years old. I mean, just, it changed everything. And, it was interesting. It wasn't painful at all. It just wasn't. But that is when it left. And I didn't realize, you figure, Shayn, if we're going to do this ceremony, or, Orin, I'm like, hey, we're going to do this ceremony, and we've talked about it 15, 20, 30 times. Don't you think somebody'd say there was an additional 21 days I had to wait till it was over? You'd think that would be said, right?
Yeah, somewhere in the fine print.
yeah, somewhere. And then she's like, good. Well, in 21 days, I'm like, cool. Can you come to fix the house? Let's fix the house, because I wasn't going to keep it. I was going to sell it. So I'm living in the KOA and paying this mortgage, and I wanted to sell the house. And I just remember I was furious. I'm like, what do you mean there's 21 more days? Nobody told me if I knew, at least I could plan. But that 21 days, that's the next episode I'm doing on the podcast, is the 21 days. And that was the worst of it all, because, I'd been to the church. I'd worked with the priest. I had talked to these people, and everybody who said they could fix it couldn't. And I knew if it wasn't going to get fixed by this lady, there really wasn't another place to go. Mm-hmm. And, I knew if that didn't happen, then ultimately I would have taken my own life. I could not have continued to do that. I couldn't live with that level of torture every single day for the rest of my life. And at this point, this was probably 6, 7, 8 months, somewhere in there. And so I was more spiritually open than I ever was. I was more tormented than I ever was. And, on the 21st day, so I get up, I'm in the camper, I stunk, I sweated all through the night because they were messing with me. The camper wasn't clean. It was not a great place to be. And as I was walking through the camper, I seen something walk towards me, and I kind of jumped back, and it was this plate of armor, and I seen these hands with this plate of armor put it on my chest, and something touched me from behind. So I'm literally getting pushed around like this, and I could see it didn't hurt, but they were like sewing this armor on me. And that was the 21st day, where my completion, the 21 is a sacred number. It's the Trinity, 777, Father, Son, the Holy Ghost, whatever you want. There's all kinds of spiritual meanings to that. But that's when things started to change. But they crawled on me really for another 18 months or so.
Wow.
It wasn't over for a long time, but the worst of it was. And then she came in about 10 days later. And I had this ghost in the house, this little old lady, and she would sit there and do dishes all night, bro. She'd just be like, this is all she did all night long, right? She'd move her hands and twitch her head. And we were in there one evening, and I was sitting on the sofa, Santa Grace and everybody was doing some stuff trying to fix the house. And I'm like, I wasn't going any further in the house. And there was a security camera right here above my head that was looking behind me where she was at. And I remember I was talking about her, and it freaked me out so bad because all of a sudden she stopped and looked at me. And I'm like, dude, that thing's aware. And, but she was the only, so when the medicine woman came to fix the house, she was the only ghost that was there. And, she let her know that everything left. And she sang 3 songs and fixed the house. I'm like, you sang 3 fucking songs, 3 songs. And it's gone.
It's just that easy, right?
Yeah. But I was the core of it. She kept saying, and I don't understand this, but she kept saying, you are the key. You are, if you're not fixed, that'll never be fixed. And I'm like, okay. So.
Just like most things, you got to start from inside to spread to the outward. And I'm sure that even within this process, there's probably a bunch of things that were trying to stray you away from this. And it was just a matter of you kept your head straight, you kept strong, and you just pushed your way through it. And you weren't like getting distracted by all these outside things. But I'm sure that they were trying every single trick they possibly had in the book to try to throw you off this path.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they threw everything. I mean, in the podcast, we start off with the worst day. And there was an instance, and this was, I don't know, I was already on the KOA, so it was like August or some time frame, and I was sitting in my camper, and the demons I covered all the mirrors, and the RVs, everything is mirrors and stuff to make it look bigger, and so I had towels over all the mirrors and stuff, and there's this one demon that opened up the wall next to me, and it looked like Roy Orbison. I'm like, Roy, dude, you still have glasses on. I mean, it looked like Roy Orbison. And he's like sticking his head through, and the German Shepherd Kennedy, she was looking at them, looking at me, looking at them, looking at me, and letting me know that they were there, and that's one of the things she would do. And finally I looked at her, I said, look, they can't fucking hurt you. Stick your head under the pillow and go to sleep. And she goes, and stuck her head under the pillow. And it's like 2-3 o'clock in the morning. And, I had my gun in my hand because I'm like, maybe I can just pull it up, pull the trigger really quick. How do I get out of this? But that was the biggest blessing of them all, because that's when I said that, I realized, I was like, you've done nothing compared to what the Marine Corps has done to me. The United States Marine Corps will hurt you at a level that you can't comprehend. And I said, this is all you got? This is all you got. And I remember just hysterically laughing. And that's the last time I ever picked my weapon up with the intention of harming myself. I was like, this is all you got? I'm like, fuck you, fuck you. You ain't getting that out of me. And, I was so grateful for that. And, it's interesting. Like you say, when you look inwards, pay attention to the synchronicities and the blessings that are right there. Somebody else may have pulled the trigger. I may have pulled the trigger or missed that and allowed myself to suffer. Did it stop it or anything like that? No. But I knew that was that flame of hope, like you get a drug addict and you get them in recovery and they're clean for about 3 or 4 days and they hear a message. That spark may not grow right there, but they ain't going to forget that. In 8 months down the line or 2 years or whatever, that spark is going to turn into a flame and they're going to change their life. And you got to look for those things, man.
I mean, just having your dogs around you, I'm sure, was one of those things that helped you make it through all this type of stuff, because everybody needs a companion for this stuff. And one thing that I've kind of been curious about is it seems like the bond with an animal is a lot different than the bond with another person. The other person, they have like their own full thought process, everything. But when you have like an animal companion, like their sole focus is you. So I feel like anytime you have an animal companion, like they're going through the same things as you. Anything that's attached to you, because your dog is also attached to you, I feel like they're going through the same thing and seeing the same thing. So in turn, like if this dog didn't go through all these experiences with you, then you probably wouldn't have came out on top the same way you did. Like, I feel like in a weird way, it kind of gave you that feel like you needed to protect something. And in turn, because you felt like you need to protect something, it helped you to stay headstrong. And in turn from that too, it's like, you know, your dog went through all this stuff, but now on the other side, I'm sure your guys' bond is completely inseparable, and your dog is probably a lot stronger of a dog than you probably will ever come across again the rest of your life, just because of the fact that it's been through this stuff with you and it stayed that close and loving with you the whole time.
Yep. Absolutely. I mean, Kennedy, dude, I had this Jeep, and we would, you get off the expressway, and sometimes there's somebody asking for money and stuff at the end of the expressway. And, I would see somebody looking at me, and the person would turn away, but the demon that happened to be in that person would be looking at me. And the German Shepherd is losing her shit, man. She's a 70-pound German Shepherd. I mean, the Jeep's going back and forth like this. I'm like, calm down. And, she would see those things. And, after everything was over, she really chilled out a lot. But during that, she was protecting me, and she'd crawl on my chest and, try to get me, so they couldn't get at me and stuff. And, but yeah, she was a great dog. She was a great dog. So German Shepherds are unique. So she passed away about 14 months ago. So I got Abigail. She's just over a year. And she's hard-headed and tries to muscle through everything. I don't know where she gets that from. I'm like, you can't muscle through it. You got to be open-hearted. And I'm over here saying, but yeah, everything, the answer is within yourself, and I never understood that. And, when you get quiet and you turn the cell phone off, you stop talking to the guys or the girls and turn off social media and get quiet, that's when you can start hearing the word of God, and, I'm not a very religious person, but I know who I work with and who does the work with me. And, the healing work that I do now is it's beautiful. So it's just beautiful.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Say, I got to give you a lot of respect for the fact that a lot of people go through these experiences and they'll completely let it destroy them. But you had those special people on the other side that'll go through these experiences. And as messed up as it sounds, like I feel like some people are intended to go through these experiences because you have to get dragged through hell in order to know how to fight back against hell. So if you had never been through these experiences, you wouldn't have the opportunity now to actually help people through these because you've had to have been there. It's kind of like, just to look for another, like something kind of similar. It's like, if somebody is helping people with addiction and get over addiction, if they haven't been there before, those people who are going through those experiences aren't going to take that person as seriously. Like they want to talk to somebody who's been there and came out on top because of it. Yeah. And it just opens up a totally different doorway and a totally different dialogue between people with being able to go back and forth, respect, and being able to understand those exact dark moments that somebody who hasn't been there before hasn't gone through. But just the fact that you're able to completely turn it around and basically, help other people recover from these experiences. Like I have a lot of respect and appreciation for you, my friend.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. One of the things that, I had to come to grips with and realize what, Jesus was real. And that, dude, I had no relationship with that dude. I didn't know he was a Jew. I didn't know he was crucified by the Romans. I didn't fucking know nothing. And don't bring that bullshit to me. But I was so broken. I'm in this Father Munford's office. He's a former British Royal Marine. So, we're kind of, he seems to think it's the same as the Marine Corps, but I'm like, okay, Father, we'll let you have that one. So he says, I want you to go through this with me. I'm going to help you. And it was so painful, but it showed me, it healed so much. He had me go back in my mind to a moment where I was getting ready to be abused. I was this 10-year-old little boy, in this position. Somebody was behind me and he says, I want you to look for Jesus in the room. And I remember telling him, I'm like, are you fucking kidding me, man? Are you fucking kidding me? And he says, son, just do it. And in my mind, with my eyes closed, there was a picture of Jesus in that room. And I said, yeah, there's a picture on the wall. And he says, no, honey, I want you to look for him. And I just remember being beside myself, pissed off and cussing. But when I looked over here in my mind, I could see Jesus standing there. And he said, what did he say to you? And I said, he doesn't have to say anything, because he was crying, right? And that was the day that I realized that he wasn't there, because in my mind as a child, you're supposed to pull me. If you're real, why did that person die? Why is this person starving? Why didn't you pull me out of that room and keep me from being hurt? And he's not there to pull me out of the room. He's there to love me unconditionally. And that's when my whole thought process changed. And he's not here to pull us out of that room. He is here to love us unconditionally through that experience. And I had made that experience my life story. Wes was raped. Well, it was valid. It was real. It was painful. But it's not my fucking story. My story is I'm a beautiful motherfucker and I'm healing people and I'm doing shit, right? That was an experience in the book of Wes as a sentence or a paragraph in the chapter all the way back here that I experienced. And then when somebody told me you can rewrite your story, and I'm like, I like that. It took me a minute to process it. And so it helped me not be a victim of that anymore, because I didn't know how to get out of the victim energy of it. And, so when I realized I had these gifts, I knew somewhere in my mind that I had to heal what was up here at such a deep level for me to be the most powerful healer that I could be and serve God. Because I'm like, if you gave me those gifts, you did that shit for a fucking reason, dude. And I am not going to turn my back on you ever again. And that's the work that I do these days. I've healed thousands of people in the last couple of years. This year, my goal is to work on 4,000 people. Wow. And, we're going to do that. It's fun.
So it always seems like Jesus, God, they always pick the people that have the most trauma because they have the most chance for redemption. So it seems like most of the prophets, they've all had their demons, they've all had their things in the past, but because of that always seems, not saying that like he loves anybody more than anybody else, but those seem to be like his special cases where he just puts that extra focus into,
Yeah, he takes the most fucked up dude in the room and says, "Hey, come here, dude. Let me give this to you." And I'm like, "What?" I mean, come on. I'm a retired Marine. I had gotten addicted to prescription pain medicine at some point from a back injury. I've had all these things that I've gone through, all these experiences. But how do I help somebody who has been abused, but I haven't been abused? So I could go into a room of 100 people right now, probably with 90% accuracy, point out everybody who has been sexually abused in a second. Because I know that energy, I know that feeling, and how better to help somebody if I've already been through it. And I tell people all the time, I am comfortable being in front of the storm and taking the brunt of the storm while you stand behind me and heal. And I will do that for you. And I'm good at it. It's fun.
Hold on tight, guys. This is our last ad break. But if you've got some free time, don't forget to check out the awesome friends of the show. I Know SQUATCH, Snarly Yow Natural Products, Crypto Theology, and Big Ape Threads.
And our other friends with affiliate links, Dimension Devices, Oregon-ite, and Sticker Mule, with additional discounts and credits available down in the show notes. And we are back, so let's hop right in.
Well, it sounds like you're doing some great work. And I think, like Shayn said, it's awesome that you've kind of had these experiences, even going back to childhood, and come out the other side and you're able to help people. I mean, I feel like it's so easy for people to just, like you said, get in that kind of feedback loop of just being a victim. And the fact that you've found some ways to help people and yourself is awesome. So thank you so much for sharing your stories. I appreciate it. We talk about a lot of weird stuff on the show, but I feel like this has been kind of a more uplifting and kind of spiritual episode than a lot of stuff we talk about. So that's been a kind of nice change of pace. It's a little happier and more upbeat.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I wouldn't recommend it. It was painful as fucking shit. I'd say, the podcast has got 23 hours of everything in great detail. So, if you want to listen to it, it's there. So,
And just for closing everything up too, if anybody, is dealing with something and they possibly want to come to you for help, or they want to connect with you to see if you can connect them with somebody else for help, or they are really fascinated in your story, maybe they have some similarities, they want to come and check out your podcast and your hours and hours of you actually talking and breaking all this stuff down, where can people get in contact with you? Where can they share their stories with you? And where can they find your podcast so they can hear your full story in full detail?
Thanks. The podcast is Enlightenment Unknown, Life of a Spiritual Nomad. And, on Spotify, we're on basically anywhere you Google it, you're going to find it. We're on YouTube. My website is VB as in Virginia Beach, vbhealer.com. You can find me on Instagram for VB Healer. So, you can go in there and Google me. You can reach out and message me through Instagram or through the website, and I'll be happy to help you. And, if for whatever reason I can direct you. I'm happy to give you advice and help you in the direction you need to go. So we also, Andrea and I wrote some books. So if you have children that are spiritually gifted, we have the newest one is Sydney's New Bike. And the first one is What Color's Your Dragon? Andrea Rice and myself wrote that. And the red dragon, I work with a red dragon that clears energies and stuff. So it's one of my tools, but it represents in my mind, it's a higher power. It's God that teaches children how to love themselves, how to love people and do community work, how to love somebody that doesn't look like them. And in the back of the book, there's some guides on how to communicate with your spiritually gifted child. So, as that kid comes to you and says, "Hey, Mom, I'm seeing things or hearing voices," the doctor wants to medicate you. And I'm not saying don't go to the doctor, but I'm just saying all our children now are being born spiritually open and gifted. They're seeing in other realms. They're hearing in other realms. They're communicating in places that you might not understand. And so we have support for those families to help support that gifted child so they can step into the person that God created them to be, not medicating them in the United States of medication, so because that's what they're going to do.
Well, that's some awesome work. I think, that's something we kind of talk about on the show, how just people aren't as perceptive to these things as they probably need to be. So I think that's some very beautiful work you're doing. And
Thanks,
hey, if I'm ever up the road in Virginia Beach, I'll have to get up with you and maybe we can hang out and do some spiritual healing and whatnot.
Yeah, man, come in and we'll put you on the healing table and you can tell everybody how it changed your life. It'll be great.
That sounds awesome.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Shayn, it's good to see you again, brother. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's always a great conversation with you. You're always welcome on the show. And I always just love communicating with you, man. You got a really good vibe about you. And like I said, you took something so negative and turned it into something positive for yourself. So just much appreciation and respect for people like you, man.
You're welcome. Thanks. Your grandmother says, "Tell him I love him." I'm like, "Yes, ma'am."
Thanks so much, Wes. It's been a pleasure.
She says, "Wear that necklace too, Shayn." All right, man.
All right. If y'all want to contact us for any reason whatsoever, Shayn, tell them how they can do that.
First and foremost, you guys can get a hold of us through email, which is bizarreencounters@outlook.com. Second, you guys can get a hold of us through social media. Instagram and Facebook are the ones that we're the most active on. Or you guys can also get a hold of us through the submission form, which is available on the Linktree. Contact us, /report an encounter, all done in the same place, so make it quick and easy for you guys. And the last way you guys can get a hold of us is through the hotline. You guys can text that, you guys can call that, you guys can leave a voicemail, whatever you guys want to do. And that number is 313-364-1551.
And once again, all this shit is listed in the link tree in the show description.
And as always, I am the one that they call Shayn SQUATCH.
And I'm the big bad back from the holiday boo daddy, Orin Felix.
And just as always, it's been a while since we told you, so we just got to remind you, we got to refresh your memory. Because guys, I know that, after the past month, you guys have maybe fallen back into your normal, rational, boring selves. So guys, don't forget to be the weird one, be spontaneous, and always, always stay bizarre. Bizarre. Bizarre.
The dog was fighting demons?